What's going on, everybody? It is the Eric Jr. podcast. We are back at it tonight. It is me, Jacob Klein, hosting. So you know it's going to be going off the rails tonight. I'm joined here by the only other co-host for tonight, Cream. Cream, how you doing, buddy? And what do you think of the intro so far?
Jacob, I am loving the energy. Of course, are without our fearless leader, Ray, who's got some family matters to take care of. So we will be, the dynamic duo rides again. We're gonna be cutting it up on this episode. I'm excited.
I think tonight, we'll keep it tight.
Yeah,
There are some quick hitter things that we got to touch on. We
of
got to get the
course.
content to the people, but I'm gonna try to rein myself in tonight. We've had a couple days to digest what happened on Sunday. We
Mhm.
got the Sixers preseason, seeing this new team just don the Sixers uniform. So just some quick hitter initial reactions. Where you want to start tonight, Cream? I think we got to rewind to Sunday. Why don't you walk me through what happened there?
Yeah, of course. Well, it's funny enough. Last week on this podcast, I, I believe I said that there was zero chance that the Eagles would win this game. That the Saints defense was actually going to eat Jalen Hurts alive, and the Eagles defense obviously wouldn't be putting up much of a fight, much like they haven't at all during the season, except in the rare scenarios when it'll make me look bad. The Eagles defense delivered, and I don't know about you. I mean, we all saw it. Jalen Hurts looked pretty good. Had a pretty good game. The key words that everyone's hearing: discipline, composure, poise, all that stuff. He looked like an NFL quarterback to me.
I'll tell you what, after Eagles games, win the losses, that Sunday, I avoid the content because I know I'm going to be checking in throughout the week,
Yeah, yeah.
and the 4-game losing streak. I mean,
That was ugly.
it was pretty brutal. Those Monday morning logins, pretty brutal. But I'll tell you what, man, after that Sunday win, I went to sleep Sunday just saying, man, it's just going to be so good to just not have the shit meet me right in the morning when I check in on my favorite Philly sports team. So I'll tell you what, Jalen Hurts, really the story of the game seems to be what he did with his legs and
Yeah.
overall his decision making, the
Mhm.
throws out of bounds, and you saw a little bit of him kind of getting out of the pocket quicker when maybe he could have hung in there towards the end of the game when the pressure started to ratchet up. But my goodness, we've got a full-blown sports talk radio segment
Yes.
going into this week against the Cardinals. Things are hot. You
Yeah.
can feel it is palpable, the energy surrounding this team and what a Cardinals win might do for the overall just influx of the entire mood that we've got with this team and how they shouldn't even be in a position to have any of it matter, but it does.
Yeah, they
And
are, and it does. Yeah, exactly
and I
right.
know, Cream, I gotta tout myself a little bit here. The score prediction for this guy who said they would score more than 10 points, my score prediction was 24-20. They went ahead and won 24-21.
Wow.
So just like I
Wow.
was right with the San Fran game, I'm good to be correct 1 out of every 10 weeks, basically, in the NFL. So book
Well,
that. And
moral of the
just,
story, kids. If you pick the Eagles to win every single week, some weeks you're gonna be right. Like, even in the worst year the Eagles have had, in this era, you're gonna be right some weeks. So that's the real moral of the story there, Jake. I'm happy you're able to get that. I of course was wrong about what the Eagles would do. I thought that there's no way the Eagles defense would, put up enough of a fight to give Jalen Hurts in the offense a chance because the story that became with Carson Wentz as the year went on, and obviously his decision making and whatnot. But when you look at it, the offense was getting put in some really bad positions. They were consistently losing the field goal, or not the field goal, um, the average start of a drive. The field position game. They were absolutely getting destroyed in that. But this game, the defense stepped up. Hurts had some short fields to work with, and he put together a couple decent drives. I mean, the one at the in the fourth quarter to kind of seal the win. That's legitimate stuff right there. You have to take that into account when you're evaluating Hurts moving forward. I thought he showed a lot of a lot of good stuff Sunday night. And I'm not the biggest Hurts guy. I think it's fair to say he has below average arm, talent. We didn't see a lot of throws, to either sideline. He kept it mainly over the middle, short throws, and when that wasn't there, he trusted his legs. I mean, and the running ability is good. There's no doubt about it. He'll be able to run on teams. I think that's a real weapon for this offense that we haven't had in quite a long time.
Yeah, I think we wait a little bit to really go in-depth, deep dive on Hurts until maybe we have another game. But I think the initial impressions of the instincts and the awareness of what down it is, of the advantage of gaining 5 yards on first down that changes the complexion of a drive, the advantage of sustaining those drives, like you mentioned, when you're going against better teams, keeping the opposing offense off the field is crucial. Now we can talk about those drives still not resulting in points when it comes to your special teams, and we got a real problem with Jake Elliott.
Yeah.
That seems to be manifesting itself at yet another position, as if every other position on this team, it wasn't enough for injury and drama and just underwhelming, lack of performance. We now have our kicker is having some psychological issues. So
not great.
Overall, really gutsy win. Like I said, as I predicted, I said they might be able to jump out to an early lead. They were able to do that. They got turnovers, which is something they rarely do. The defense is starting to pile up those sack numbers and starting to kind of take form in terms of its motto of bending and not breaking. And you saw it there at the end of the game. A lot of people think that the Saints are, good team even without Drew Brees. It depends on what you think about Taysom Hill. But that defense really went out there. Some guys made plays. More guys went down. Rodney McLeod out for the year. You've got
Slade missed a little bit of action.
They're on their third or fourth string DBs, but they're still, doing enough to get it done. And that's what you're always going to love and respect about this team. And just injuries galore. We're gonna suit up our 13th starting O-line, and we're gonna trot back out there this Sunday, and we're gonna try to win again.
Yeah, exactly. Just a little bit of caveats for Sunday's game. Obviously, that was the first time any defense, was seeing Hurts for an extended period of time. They didn't have a lot of tape to work with. We'll see what adjustments Arizona makes watching that New Orleans tape. That'll be interesting to see, and how Hurts deals with that. And then I think the Saints would have put themselves at a real disadvantage when they chose to start a tight end at quarterback for their entire game. I don't know what it is with Taysom Hill, why people like him. He's not an NFL quarterback. I watched
Ray wanted to swap him for Wentz last week.
Oh my god. That dude can't. That is an absolute egomaniac move by Sean Payton to be starting that guy instead of Jameis Winston. I know Jameis doesn't do the Drew Brees. He's like the antithetical Drew Brees, but at least he's an NFL quarterback. Taysom Hill is not. I think it's hilarious that they are insisting on putting themselves at a disadvantage every single game. And that team's good enough for it to work, which is annoying, but
exactly.
I think that's been made pretty clear that dude shouldn't be playing quarterback. Whatever. Do you want to anything else jump out at you from the game?
It's just quickly regarding Hurts and just seeing a different quarterback out there. There's definitely that different level of that swagger, his style and his personality. His personality. I know that I don't want to take this too far, but it's a very stark contrast of really this youth, this kind of naivete, but energy, really that just excitement to be in the league and kind of injecting that into the team. It really felt noticeable on the broadcast, and obviously jumping out to a lead and making some key big plays early in the game.
Plays that really the rest of the team did not make all year. We want to be clear.
Correct.
Correct. The only way they won this game is a lot of guys had to overperform, and I thought they all stepped up and used that word energy, and I think that's absolutely true. They definitely responded to Hurts's youthfulness, as you said. That's absolutely a factor. I think it's a big factor why Doug feels comfortable moving forward with Hurts. He's going to start on next Sunday for the Arizona, and I imagine, and I think you do too, that he will be the starter for the rest of the season.
I would have to think
Yeah,
so. I mean, outside of an
unless things
injury,
go,
doesn't make
yeah,
sense.
yeah. It would take a pretty dramatic turn of events for Wentz to be coming back in this season. But yeah, I mean, you said defense coming up with two turnovers. I thought they were gifted those ones a little bit. Taysom Hill firing a rocket at Alvin Kamara's head, like
Yeah,
3 yards
dude, he
away
made
from
some
him.
bad throws.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but you're right. Everybody stepped up. Everybody contributed to that win. I thought Rieger had some nice plays. I thought Doug Peterson probably had his best game. He had a little bit more wiggle room. He had obviously a quarterback who wasn't in like the worst form of his life, which is something. And Hurts's mobility does give you an extra weapon in that offense. I thought it was probably Doug's best game of the season, but that's again not a very high bar to clear.
Yeah, you definitely saw some more creativity, but you also saw the ball, a lack of hesitation in the decision making. So, for example, if you remember that one kind of a big gash play where Rieger's over the middle, and then he had a whole big green field in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
Hurts puts that ball on him, and that's just a regular NFL throw. But when you're doing that consistently and when you're picking up decisively, and when you're picking up 5 yards on first and second down consistently to put yourself in third and reasonable, and you know where the sticks are, and you're throwing the ball away and not taking negative sacks, the culmination of all that is remaining in games, maintaining a sizable lead or a close enough margin to make it competitive, and keeping your team motivated and believing in your potential to be a winning franchise. And you really needed this win this week, regardless of what happens the rest of the year. You could kind of feel the season starting to really take that of, like, we haven't really had that with an Eagles team under this tenure of
quitting
kind
on
of
the
giving
team
up.
Kind of thing,
Quitting on the team, that's a very serious accusation to make, and you could kind of see it starting to form of like 5 losses in a row, all of them just like crucial and debilitating, and it was really nice to avoid that. We'll see what happens this week with Arizona, but can I tell you one other thing?
Yeah, sure.
How about 2 things? Josh Sweat, his performance.
Oh my God, absolutely.
And Josh Sweat, the sack celebration. I mean, that has got to be one of the best celebrations out there, bro. Wiping the brow and just, dude, I love it. I can't get enough of it. I've been doing it around my house all day.
I mean,
it's an amazing celebration.
You're absolutely right. Josh Sweat did. I mean, he came in after Barnett got injured, and he absolutely wreaked havoc. Like we've seen him in spurts this season come in and make a difference, but that was probably the most sustained level of high level play for him that we've seen, and it's encouraging as one of the few young guys on this team with potential yet to be realized. That was really nice to see, and of course, I mean, we all love sack celebrations. I mean, it's nice to get a new one though. We've seen a lot of the sniper ones from Fletcher Cox, but I'm glad Sweat is getting in on the game. Yeah.
And I know it's, you look at the limited snaps and then you look at the impact, but he's putting up the counting numbers this year.
Yeah, he absolutely is. Yeah.
His sacks and his pressures and his impact are really being felt. And it's, for Howie, there was a graphic up of, Rieger had a pretty good game. You look at Hurts actually coming in and doing what he did. And then, it was kind of looking at Howie's track record. Like, well, for this week, maybe they're not all terrible picks. It's like, that's how football
for
is.
This week,
we all know the truth. We know the truth.
Yes, blind squirrels and nuts and something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to move on to some ball talk?
I think I'm all Eagles out, but do you have a prediction for this week? We're kind of on a Hurts high. We're on a Hurts high right now. At least I am. And do you think we're coming down for a hard crash? A la college morning, night after going out crash.
They're still in the thick of things, so I'm going to expect a really tough game flying across the country from a pretty tough team that has a really exciting quarterback, a mobile quarterback We've struggled with mobile quarterbacks, I think, for the entirety of the Eagles franchise. So I'm not particularly hopeful about this game coming out now.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the decimation to the defense, and you look at the mobility of the other opposing quarterback, and you just know he's putting up some gaudy numbers. Like if you've got Murray in fantasy, you can book it that it's 25 points plus.
Plus, yeah, for a playoff week, that's big, yeah.
And that's massive, yeah, for the people in their semi-championships. Congrats to you, sir, for advancing in our league.
Thank you.
For the Eagles to have a chance in this game, you are going to need an even better Jalen Hurts performance because they're going to have to score. And I think that's just asking an astronomical amount after what he just did.
They played a great game on offense last week, with the exception of the one fumble from Hurts late in the game. And they only put up 21 points. That's not enough against this team. Now, Arizona's defense isn't as good as the Saints, but like this offense, I should say, has struggled to put up points the entire year. So I can't imagine Hurts coming in is going to completely, flip the switch. But because we don't really score points outside of that one game against Seattle. Like I'm concerned. Yeah.
Right. But what I would say is that time of possession and those sustained drives, that could be a difference where
they were good.
I'm saying that, ideally, and I think practically it's going to have to be a higher scoring game. But if you put together 2 5 or 6 minute drives, even if they result in field goals, that's massive in terms
keeping them off the field for sure.
That game management, and we'll see if Doug. I think this has got to be a kitchen sink in terms of play calling, and you saw a little bit of creativity this week. I've got to see even more. You might as well. You have to have this game to have any type of relevance, and I need to see something different. Like show me something that we haven't seen all year. So we'll see. We'll see if he has that sense of urgency.
You're putting a lot on him. I wonder if you're not setting yourself up for some disappointment on Sunday.
Well, I mean, with this offensive line, I mean, I'm getting my hopes way too high, but I do think there is some merit in saying, yes, we're decimated everywhere. However, I can still do something that can maybe manufacture 1 to 2 big plays that could be the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, you want to move on to some Sixers?
I suppose it's that time of year. I mean, the most rapid off season of all time.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically been like 2 months since LeBron won, and now we're playing basketball again, which is weird. But I mean, welcome to 2020. 2020 is gonna push and cram every last bit of weird that we get into this year. I would expect nothing but chaos for the next 15 days.
That's a very smart way to go about things.
Yeah. So obviously, Sixers playing tonight against Boston. A little bit of rust was evident, I think. Obviously, the Sixers have not been able to get together for very long. None of the teams have. They basically had like a week of practice before this game. They're trying to integrate a lot of new players. But with all that, I thought they played pretty well. Boston couldn't hit a lick for anything. But the Sixers are winning, and they did win the first half. So how did you feel about the Sixers, specifically, the big guys, Embiid, Simmons, obviously?
Yeah, seeing him back out there, seeing Ben out there, after the way that last season ended, it's nice.
Yeah,
now,
for sure.
And just seeing Joel and a couple familiar faces, Matisse and Shake, it's good to just see them out there, and we've had this really, at least seemingly so, positive vibe around camp, and just the comments, other than the stuff with Doc and his former team. But overall, you get this optimistic sense. You've got Daryl Morey at the helm. You're going into this season, with rumors swirling saying, we're happy with the acquisitions we made, the guy that we were able to dump in Al Horford, that alleviation. And I think with Ben and Joel seemed to have a pretty good first half, and definitely that spacing as the season goes on. We'll see hopefully part of his game continue to improve on the margins in terms of passing out of double teams and making some quicker decisions. but his easy bread and butter offense doesn't look like it's ever going anywhere. That soft touch on his jump shot looks
Yeah.
good, and
If
Ben
it ain't
Simmons.
broke, yeah.
Exactly, and we'll see. With this added space, that gravity of Seth Curry specifically, and a little, to an extent, Danny Green
Yeah.
should do wonders for some of those easy buckets that have been sorely lacking
Yeah.
the past couple seasons. Creamy, you got to break down. I need you to talk to me about Ben Simmons. You can say whatever you want, but I need you to talk about Ben Simmons right now.
Okay, so the thing is, he's the same. He's exactly the same as when we last saw him in the bubble. Nothing's changed. Perhaps it was unfair for us to expect. It has only been a couple of months. This was the shortest offseason in NBA history, like of any sport history, I imagine. Like there was not a lot of time between recovering from that injury and being able to actually do anything different. But he is the same, and in both good ways and of course bad. Like I thought he played pretty well on the break. He was finding teammates all night. I thought he shot pretty well from the line, which is nice to see. Uh, he doesn't really create. He still struggles to create in the half court, and Boston obviously a super stout defensive team. So maybe we're it is just one game. There's only so much you can glean from the first half of a preseason basketball game when they haven't been playing together at all. But yeah, I mean, I thought he was pretty good. There's nothing but he is who we thought he was. And I don't think that's changing anytime soon. So
I mean, the vision's always going to be there. It seems the passing and everything you said about the timeline for the injury recovery. I accept all that, and
yeah,
all that to say that his limitations as we traverse this upcoming season and approach the playoffs. We all know that the playoffs are a different animal, almost a different, the way it's officiated, the way that the game flows, it's totally different.
Yeah.
With the intensity and the way that the game actually goes. So I don't know, and I know that we're far enough away from that, but over the course of this season, I know that's where he sits currently. He has not demonstrated any observable changes in his game. Mm-hmm. But over the course of this season, I really would like to see, outside of even shooting, the attack mode at the rim, the increase in his percentage from the line, and just, limiting the turnovers and just doing everything that he's willing to and capable of outside of shooting to help this team, again, on the margins to just continue to serve as the leader. The positive coverage out of camp all sounds great.
Yep.
Doc's comments about Ben sound great, but
everybody loves everybody.
Right. I see the same. I see this same, type of moves from him. I see the same types of space that he's occupying as in years past.
Yeah.
And it's starting to wear on me a bit.
Right.
Looking at projecting further.
Yeah, of course. While talking about that, let's talk about the offense as a whole, because we did have two new additions, Danny Green, Seth Curry. They came in. Seth Curry played nearly twice as much as Danny Green, which I thought was interesting. But neither of them hit very many threes. They didn't. The Sixers as a team, I think, took like 14 for the first half, which I thought was a little bit low, but. When you factor in that Boston wasn't sending any double teams, it's still preseason. I figure that number will rise, and I thought Danny Green and Seth Curry occupied good spaces on the floor. They created space for Joel Embiid to eat down low. I thought they were as advertised for the first preseason game. Yeah, so I felt good about it. But the one thing I did notice, and we'll get to some of the other players down the bench, but the one thing I did notice was whenever it did look a lot like the same offense. The offense didn't look really any different other than that there was more space. It was a lot of just dribbling around until you can feed Joel on the post and then working off of that. I didn't see a lot of we saw some pick and rolls, but they never really led anywhere. It almost always evolved into, if they didn't score in the first 5 seconds, you're sitting back and then you're waiting for Joel to get positioning down low, which it's early, but that's just something that stuck out to me. I don't know about you.
Absolutely. The impression of seeing the offense, even with the new coach, really, again, occupying that same space on the floor and trying to set up Joel in a very similar way that we've
Yeah.
become accustomed to. Um, and I just worry that you need, obviously, another ball handler other than Ben Simmons that can shoot. And I just don't know if the hodgepodge of Shake and occasionally maybe like Seth and, whoever else it's going to be, that's actually taking the ball up and can shoot and can actually do something on a pick and roll other than kind of halfway commit to driving hard to the basket, what it's going to do. And I don't know. I'm starting to just have some concerns because I just maybe we have to lower our expectations significantly.
Well,
Because
yeah.
this is what I want to say really is that like Steph Curry and Danny Green are not going to ever be anything close to what I saw with an offense with JJ Redick. Like
Right.
even just that one guy of an elite skill, the curling and his movement and how that freed up, how the ball would whip around, and go around the horn. It just doesn't happen like that. And I don't think that these guys will do that. Yes, they will alleviate some of the glaring, blatant problems that they have with spacing and shooting, but they're just
Right.
not gonna do enough to make it ever really look easy on a consistent basis. Is what I would say.
They're not revolutionary players. There's a reason they were both available this summer. Their teams felt it. And Danny Green traded twice. Like there's a reason for that. They're not world beaters. Danny Green, not the player he was, and Seth Curry, while it is fair to say that he is actually a better shooter than JJ Redick, that does not say that he is better than JJ Redick. JJ has really crafted an excellent repertoire of being able to get open in a variety of ways, moving offensively that really puts a lot of pressure on the defense. Seth Curry isn't that. I thought he played okay. He handled the ball a little bit, which is something I think a lot of people want to see. And when he was, he was getting to his spots and he was firing, and that's what you want from him. And I think he is gonna be a positive, and I think they're both positives. But like you said, neither are creators from the perimeter. Neither have an excellent handle. They can't really get to the rim. So it is going to be kind of a throwback to the 2018 team, maybe, where you had basically just Joe and Ben, and then a lot of just three-point shooters and spacers doing a couple of different things, but nobody else really being able to take control. I think that's what we're seeing with this roster right now, and that 2018 team was successful. It was third in the East. This team can win a lot of games as presently constructed, but it does lack a certain thing. And while we're at it, let's just talk about the one guy we hope could fill that role, and that's Shake Milton. He came in, he played great. He played amazing. 8 for 14 from the field. He scored 19 points today. I thought, he was pretty comfortable on the ball. It's not there yet, but we're seeing exactly what we saw last year from him, and that's just confirming that this is who he is as a player. He's a guy who can come in, and when you put the ball in his hands, he can score. 3 for 6 from three. He's now done it. He did it before the bubble. He did it post bubble, and now he's doing it now. I know it's just one game, but I feel good about where Shake Milton is and how he projects to the team.
Yeah, I definitely think he's your lone bright spot from tonight.
Yeah.
And what I would say is with a more defined role and a more defined and explicit expectation of what he is to do with a second unit, I do think that he can thrive because I think the shot and the form are absolutely legit.
Yeah.
And I think that the frame and the body, it appears that he's worked on it, and to finish with some of these plays and to get, those inches closer to the rim that you need to either attract a foul or finish and to really take your game to the next level and to hit at a little bit of a higher clip from three. If he takes, multiple steps like that this year, you're going to see some real chatter about him as a most improved, as a six man. We'll see. But I definitely think he's making a strong, compelling case to be that lead guard for a second unit that now with some NBA minutes going against some actual NBA teams and other guards, it's not going to blow him away every time. And you know what has struck me about him, Kareem, is he doesn't get rattled that easily. He has started out poorly in some games and really come back to fight the good fight and to even out and to hit some big shots. So that really sticks out to me as well.
Yeah, he's definitely a rhythm player. You just kind of have to stick with him until he gets going. But once he gets going, we've seen it. I mean, Doc Rivers saw it firsthand last year with getting 39 points dropped on his head. He can light it up at times, and he can take over games from the offensive standpoint. That's definitely somebody that you're excited about after this game. Whether or not he can be that guy full time, whether he can do that against, playoff defenses in crunch time, that is probably asking a bit too much too soon. But you have to be happy with his progression. He seems to be a real keeper.
I mean, yeah, we'll see. We've been building Shake Up for a little bit now, and if he comes out the start of the season with that second unit with a competent big man that he can run a little bit of pick and roll with Dwight Howard and some competent guys beside him, that'll be huge for this team if he can kind of stabilize the second unit, give them a couple good minutes of being able to keep up with the opposing second unit to give Ben and Joel some extended rest some games. That would be massive.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit about the rotation, and then I think we should probably move on. Some other news around the NBA breaking today, which is interesting. So for the first three quarters, Doc Rivers going with a 10-man rotation. The five starters, obviously, Shake Milton and Korkmaz were the first guards off the bench, and Dwight Howard and Mike Scott and Thibault rounding out the rotation. Pretty much as advertised. Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say the guys at the top, the two top guys off the bench, I think that makes sense. And then after that, it does seem like Doc may have that proclivity for leaning towards the vets a little bit more, leaning on them.
Mike Scott got a lot of minutes.
I mean, obviously it's preseason, but I do think that you will see a more prominent focus on still having vets play regular season, even if it's spot minutes, 6 to 8 a game, getting them in there, not letting them
Keeping
maybe
them
go.
Fresh,
Right, not letting them go on those droughts without really getting that game action, because it does matter. Interesting that he.
And it seems like the Sixers have a little bit of depth now. Like there's competition for that 9th spot, that 10th spot. Matisse Thybulle. I thought he had a little bit of a rough game today. New haircut, maybe just getting used to it. But I mean, when he's your 10th guy coming off the bench, that's a real weapon. And Furkan. I know he didn't exactly light it up tonight, but I thought he played pretty well offensively. He was, we've seen his handle, I think, grow a little bit each year, and I think it's to a point where, it's not a liability. He can, do straight line drives. He can, blow by closeouts a little bit. So I like what I saw from Furkan. Dwight Howard was as advertised. And Thibault only getting 10 minutes. That's got to be a little disappointing for him. I hope that he can kind of get a little bit of a groove, and Doc gives him the playing time, because I think he's definitely worth it.
Yeah, you could maybe see that shorter leash with Tease in like those crunch time or fourth quarter minutes. Last thing I would say is that I got to be honest. I don't want to admit it, but seeing Dwight Howard out there, he didn't look amazing, but just seeing a guy that actually sets the screen and stands there and waits for it to develop and waits for a switch or something to happen, and then rolls
hard to the rim.
Rolls hard. A guy that is a little bouncy. A guy that can get a couple of those energy creating rebounds.
Welcome to the dark side, Jake. I
know on the second and third hop, getting those rebounds and the kickouts for extra possessions. I mean,
did you ever thought you'd be here? Did you ever thought you'd be here?
Listen, here's the thing. Like I looked at every other acquisition, the Seth Green and the Danny Green and the Seth Curry and Maxey, and I look at all that, and I'm just like, I don't know if any of those guys will actually like jump out and make a difference this year. They're all kind of question marks, and they got to prove it. But with Dwight, even tonight in 6 minutes of preseason basketball that I watched with him, it jumped out that
Yeah.
with a second unit, you have a competent big, and it's like that's just one less thing, at least for 1 year this year, that I'm going to have to be faced with every game. It's like, oh my God, Embiidless minutes. Like, oh my God, this dude. And Dwight did get yammed on a couple times on some easy alley-oops, but that's communication with new
Yeah,
teammates and stuff. And
he's only
I'm
been
just,
here a
I'm
little bit of time, but yeah.
I'm excited, that we have a competent backup big, more so than I thought I would be, and it happens to be Dwight Howard. Who would have fucking thought?
Yeah, exactly. Mop up, some mop up work for our guy Tyrese Maxey. Played pretty well, 4 for 6 from the field, 3 assists. I think him getting minutes is going to be something I'm going to be watching really closely this year because I think he's worth it. I am a big proponent of the saying "play the kids." It's soccer saying, but I think every sport should adapt it because I think playing the kids that have potential, I think it's important. Even though he's probably not super ready to contribute on a contending team right now, I think any minutes that go to Tyrese Maxey are going to pay dividends down the road. I hope that he doesn't get frozen out of the rotation for large swaths this year. That's something I'm going to be watching pretty closely.
Definitely.
Okay, moving on. We do have some big news, breaking news in the NBA. One that I think a lot of people were surprised by. Giannis Antetokounmpo opting to stay in Milwaukee, signing that big Supermax contract. He's going to stay in there for the next 6 seasons. How do you like that, Jake?
It's definitely mildly surprising.
Yeah.
I'll qualify it with mildly because it's not like, I mean, you can make the argument. It's not like this is like an untradeable deal where it's like in 2 years if they've made early playoff exits and he's like, I want out. It's not like that contract, since he's going to be such a generational player, will prevent that. And he's got the opt out after the 4th year or whatever. But listen, all the other teams that were really thinking like, okay, once the deadline passes and now it's official that he'll be officially, looking to get out. I mean, that would kind of suck for one of those organizations who really thought they had a real chance. If you're, I don't know who exactly they are, but obviously Miami and some other teams were in the mix maybe. Here's the thing, Cream. I want to say this is good, right? It's good for the small market teams. It's good for the stabilization of the league and for the small markets too. And it's good for that, exact reason why you have that hyper max deal to be able to give, right? It's good for all those reasons, except it's not, because having him in Milwaukee is not it's not good for the league. It's like, what it reminds me of, Cream? It's Mike Trout in Anaheim. That's what it is. It's having a generational talent that never is going to be able to shine on the brightest stage of your league. And that sucks for the consumer. And like Milwaukee just sucks, man. And they're not going to win. And that's why I don't like it.
Yeah. It definitely feels like he was bullied into staying by the small market NBA people. Like I don't know. Maybe he just really likes it there. I mean, clearly he's got a good thing going. I thought he would have at least brought it into free agency, but I mean, he's staying. It definitely is going to be a shift in the league's mentality in terms of trading, and it probably impacts a guy that we're obviously going to talk about, James Harden. Teams that were saving their kind of stock for the 2021 when Giannis would be a free agent. The Heat, the Mavericks come to mind. Like, are they in a position now that they're more willing to go after a guy like James Harden? I think it absolutely makes them more bigger players in that. And if Daryl Morey wants James Harden, he may just have to go and get him, regardless of if it's not like the perfect situation, the perfect deal. If we're giving up, a little bit more value than we want to, it may just have to happen just to get him, because it's no longer a 2-team race with us in Brooklyn or whatever it is. Miami is in. I think they're gonna be putting Tyler Hero on the table, and if Houston likes their team currently minus James Harden, if John Wall is playing well and Christian Wood looks good, and Eric Gordon is, I guess, Eric Gordon, Hero fits that, and people seem to like him. I'm a little bit of a skeptic just because I don't see much outside of the shot making, and the shot making is good. Don't get me wrong, but um, I'm a little concerned if he can ever take the step into legitimate stardom based on just that one skill. But he certainly has that one skill, and it is valuable in today's NBA. So I think if Daryl Morey wants James Harden, he may have to go get him. You know.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably the most immediate impact of the Giannis decision, right? Is that the focus is now completely and unabashedly focused on James Harden's departure, and the other teams that maybe who weren't even that interested saying, you know what, there aren't that many paths to relevancy. You know, you got to forge your own. That's what you see. That's what you saw Daryl do when he originally got James Harden. You know, that's what you have to do to then begin an era for a franchise. And I think the most immediate impacts really are that it's on that teams this past offseason, including Miami, kind of were thinking a little bit too far down the line. That's an immediate impact of them maybe not filling out holes of their roster that they otherwise might have. And that's Miami and other teams, including Dallas and whoever else, who thought that they maybe had a 10% chance. So that's an immediate effect, and also now completely focusing on James Harden. And I got to tell you, Kareem, I've gone back and forth so many times already.
Yes, you and every other Sixers fan in the world
but it just
is
seems
wavering.
It seems like people are pretty deeply entrenched in those camps, right? And then you have the people like me who follow the league and am pretty knowledgeable and up to date on what's valuable and everything. And even I am like, man, like
I don't know.
I look at Ben Simmons tonight, and I look at what he's done throughout his career thus far, and I say this guy on one side of the ball is absolutely elite, and on the other side does a lot of really, really good things. But in the playoffs, when it matters the most, those skills, his positives, drastically dip.
Yeah.
And I think about this team, and we talk about projecting and having flexibility long term with two generational talents. And if you don't want to trade Ben Simmons for James Harden, then of course you could trade Ben Simmons for something very valuable later on. That's the train of thought. But players like Harden don't come around, and Ben Simmons' value, if he goes out there and has another bad playoff performance at the end of a statistically good but not jumping off the page with development season, and they have an early playoff departure, people are going to look at Ben Simmons and say, well, this guy's very good, but there's a ceiling, and it's kind of been seen at the highest level of play. Yeah. And what does that do to his value when versus what it is now? And you have a James Harden cloud hovering over the Sixers team, Kareem, and we've kind of been batting it away, keeping it at bay, but it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere.
No, it doesn't. Until he gets traded to here or another place, it's going to remain kind of the big. Yeah, you're right. The cloud hanging over. And as someone, it's interesting you say you've been wavering, because as someone who's been fairly entrenched into the Harden camp, I can't help but, late at night when I'm about to drift off to sleep, I think, oh, well, what if this and what if that? And going through 1,000 hypotheticals in my head, wondering, is it the right choice? And you know what? Something I came up with this week that I want to share a little bit, because I think it's a little bit relatable, and it's not necessarily a reason not to do the trade, because it doesn't have a lot to do with the on-court product or anything. It's just about the way I feel, and we, I know the Ricky guys do this a lot. Like, well, who do you want? What do you want out of the Sixers team? Do you want the best possible chance to win a title, or do you want a team you can root for? And obviously the answer is both. But the one thing I thought of was that, man, if you do this James Harden thing, the other side isn't going to look pretty, no matter what. Like, even if it's good, the other side's not. You gotta, once you trade for James Harden, you just gotta. You're all in. You're all in on this season. You're all in on every season that you have James Harden, and we saw, and we know what Houston looks like, kind of post the first version of James Harden, right? They just don't have anything moving forward, and if we trade for Harden, every year you're just spending another bullet, right? Like you gotta just empty the chamber trying to get a championship, and that's kind of exhausting to think about.
until you get the championship.
Until you get the
right?
championship, you have to just keep doing it and until you fail. And on the other side, it's not going to look pretty. I think you're going to have an older Embiid who knows what he looks like into his 30s, and you're going to have James Harden, potentially, or for a couple of years, and you're not going to have many draft picks. The young players that you have on your team now are probably it if they're not used in trade pieces. There's not a lot of hope for 7 years from now. You know what I mean? If you trade for James Harden, so I wonder. After a season where we were just so all in and it was just so miserable, I kind of liked the idea of not being all in, and James Harden completely flips that on its head. That's just something I was thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah, like having them go into this season, right? Like imagine this is where they are right now.
Yeah.
And then where they're going to be at the trade deadline this year. Do you foresee either one of these guys drastically taking a dip in their performance, or will they be relatively the same product that they are now and at the trade deadline?
Are you talking about our two guys, Embiid and Simmons?
No, I'm talking about
James
Harden and Ben Simmons. Will they basically be the same products you have now, as opposed to their value going down, or maybe in the case of a Ben Simmons somehow maybe increasing a little bit?
I think, you know what? I think it may be the opposite. I think James Harden may just remind everybody that he's, a perennial MVP candidate when he's just dropping 35 a game. I don't know how that decreases his value. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When Houston's right in the thick of it for the 7th seed, I don't see how that makes it any easier. But it's there's so many different angles with this thing. That's why it's been dominating. Anytime a player of Harden's caliber is on the market, there's just so many different ways to look at it. If I'm Houston, I'm absolutely trying to see out the season. I do not want to trade James Harden this summer or this season. I want to wait until the summer. I want to try to get one of them juicy 2021 lottery picks. I want to get into that top 10 of this upcoming draft, because it is looking juicy, and there's no way for Houston to get that, without giving them James Harden, and then they're not going to be a top 10 pick, with James Harden. So there's so many, it's interesting. I think Houston is going to try to slowball this as long as possible, and it's whether a team comes over the top with an offer is what's going to get it done. And that's why I was more confident in Ben Simmons, in the Sixers getting James Harden this season last week than I am now, and especially with Miami potentially entering the fray. I'm getting less and less confident that this is going to actually happen.
Yeah, and maybe for the better, or at least now we can acknowledge that there's going to be other teams in the mix, and we're not the definitive go-to, even though we do have the asset that seems to supersede anything else, at least for now, in Ben Simmons. And, the reports of, it's going to be Simmons plus 3 first, and that's where they're even starting.
That's obviously a starting point, yeah.
I think you're right. They're going to go into the season, and I think maybe Ben Simmons has the potential to have his value just dip ever so slightly, and maybe kind of force the issue on having to give up picks in addition to him. But I think James Harden will come out, do what he does, and we'll see with that Rockets team. I think they're still a playoff team, and if they go out there and win a round, and James Harden looks good and wasn't a total asshole in a chaotic sense, and said and did the right things to get to the offseason knowing he would get moved, then it could be no longer feasible, no longer possible, as opposed to now, which I guess, if I had to guess, is probably for the best. So like you said, kind of going into the season with less pressure if we stand pat. When that gets to the deadline, depending on where the team is at, maybe the mindset changes.
Who knows what happens,
in terms of wanting to take a swing.
And it might not be for Harden. There are other players that are going to be available. If Indiana's season goes sideways, is Victor Oladipo available? Buddy Hield obviously is a favorite name that comes up. Daryl Morey will have the opportunity to uh, make a move, improve this team in the season. It doesn't particularly have to be uh, James Harden.
Right. Right. I mean, I think maybe you could get everything you kind of need by just trading for J.J. Redick and just call it a day. Maybe that solves basically the problems we need.
Maybe. Okay. I think that about wraps it up. A short episode this week. We'll come back next week for holiday themed episode. Hopefully discussing a good Sixers opener next Wednesday versus the that Wizards team that traded John Wall, and then we'll see where the Eagles are too. Any last words, Jacob?
I am mentally preparing for the full-blown Jalen Hurts is the way after an Eagles win this Sunday, and I just want everybody else to be mentally locked in for what that entails. So get your shit together.
Okay.
Put it all in a bag because it's coming.
Very good, very good. Okay. I want to thank our listeners for following with us, staying till the end, and if you're not already, check out the EJP on Twitter at Eric Jr. Podcast on the tweet machine, and give us send us a question or comment, and we'll get you on the next show. How about that? Thank you very much. Goodbye. Good night. Thank you.